What's up, everyone? We are back. Back to the office. Back to New York. Back for another Showdown breakdown. Where my turds at? Where they at? Guys, in the comment section, put up your favorite turds for this one. Let's talk about it. We've got the Rams. We've got the Ravens. We've got a big Monday night showdown. Big showdown. I don't know about I'm going to say big Monday night showdown. What we've got is a fun game between two good teams. The game total 47 points. This is coming down a little bit, actually. Let's take a look at the live odds here. Game total, we're at 46.5 at the moment, 47, 46.5, been fluctuating a little bit. 3-point spread, very close game. Now, when the road team is a 3-point favorite, what that tells us is, the Ravens are generally considered a much better team overall. And, the home field advantage going with the Rams is what levels this one out. Now, defensively, let's just look at the general numbers before we get into the breakdown. There are some players on these teams that we have to be aware of that sort of, there's some excellent defensive back play. Both teams have elite, top of the NFL cornerback ones, for example. Well, let's go the overall defense. Ravens run defense, mediocre. That's how you want to attack them this season. 25th DVOA. It's mediocre. That's bad. Bad. Pass defense has been elite for the Ravens. Elite. 3rd in DVOA. It's really good. So when we're looking at the Rams offense, obviously things point to the running game, Gurley and Malcolm Brown. When it comes to the Rams defense, they've been better versus the run than the pass for most of the season. They do have actually quality cornerback play. They have Jalen Ramsey, but it's more CB1 play. So, you can attack them, but it's a little bit tougher to attack them with your WR1. That would mean, it's hard to really say what it means against the Ravens in terms of if that's that big of a deal. But it's something to note. So both of these teams have elite cornerback, top cornerback on their team. Rams have been very good against the run. Ravens have been better against the pass overall. So that's our baseline for going into the game. Okay. Now, one of the things with the Ravens offense is they've really run it through, the passing offense essentially has been run through two guys. Mark Andrews right here, we've got him on our list as one of the top players. Now, he plays tight end, and the nice thing is he'll avoid Jalen Ramsey coverage, and he'll avoid the elite cornerback play. The other player is Marquise Brown, Hollywood, and when he's in the game, and he's only in there for about half the snaps, he will probably get the Jalen Ramsey treatment. Not a good situation for Marquise Brown, Hollywood. But, that's what it is. So we've got to know this going in. Most important notes on this game before we kind of get into the specific breakdown is, listen, Lamar Jackson is a cheat code quarterback. Much like Christian McCaffrey at the running back position, Lamar Jackson is the entirety of his team's offense for most games. Okay? So, DraftKings, they jacked up his salary to a crazy level, but it's not out of control in my mind. I think it's understandable considering what this guy has been doing. And let's just look at it so you can really just fathom this. Okay? There was the game when Mark Ingram got a bunch of touchdowns against Pittsburgh, but outside of that, 21 was a bad game, and then it's 27. Every game is 33, 28, 27, 32. These numbers are crazy. Right. And it's very consistent. And he does. We keep wanting to fade him. Listen, there's always merit in fading. And I'm going to talk about that. But if you look at these FanDuel scores, for example, it's almost impossible for other players to produce more fantasy points than what Lamar Jackson has been doing on a week-to-week basis. He is on another level. The rushing yards, he's a running back and a quarterback all mixed into one. He's not just a He's not just a running back and a quarterback all mixed into one. He's a good running back and a very good quarterback all mixed into one. So, it's something special. It's something unique. Now, Christian McCaffrey is that type of player. I want to reference a showdown from earlier this season that I won, right? And it was where Christian McCaffrey and the Panthers were taking on the Bucks, and I didn't fade Christian McCaffrey. Let's not go crazy, but on DraftKings for the lineups, I didn't use him at the captain spot. I just didn't use him at all. I figured, what, at his price, if he's not the captain, the highest scoring player, he's probably not going to be in the perfect lineup. It was DraftKings only approach, and it worked. So of the 20% of lineups I made without Christian McCaffrey at all, one of them hit for the nuts. So few people played any lineups without him that it was worth the leverage, even as crazy unlikely as it was for Christian McCaffrey to have a bad game. It worked out. And that's really what you have to know about these showdowns. Sometimes you can get a little bit different with it. Sometimes you can look for the most obvious play and just make sure you have some lineups that don't have that. The most obvious play. Now, one of the interesting things here is both of these defenses, like I said, are really good. You've got a Rams defense that's very good against the run. They're good against the pass too. They have elite cornerback play. Again, Jalen Ramsey's on that team now. So when we're looking at their DVOA numbers, for example, that includes a time period when they didn't have Jalen Ramsey on there. He's there now. So what do you do with that? Well, teams that are good defensively, they get defensive stops. And a lot of times that leads to either, definitely kicker action. Okay. When does the kicker come into play? When a good defense is out there, a good offense is out there against them. They can move the football, but they can't get into the end zone. The kickers come into play. So especially on DraftKings, one of the early approaches that I'm looking at is kind of locking in kickers, both kickers even, but never locking. I don't lock anybody. But like using the kickers to open up salary. If you want to use Jackson at the quarterback at the captain, which is totally understandable, you're going to need some cheapos, right? So, people are going to go with some of the really bad ones, and we're going to talk about the turds. We got turds that are going to open up some stuff, but I'm talking about, if we're trying to do more of a cash game approach or something like that, don't be afraid to use both kickers. As a matter of fact, you probably should if you're doing any sort of high dollar entry. You should have both kickers in there. Why? Because these are two elite kickers. We're not even talking about regular kickers here. This is Legatron and Tucker. We can have an argument over which one of these guys is the best kicker in the NFL, or we can bring in, the money badger in the conversation at some point if he keeps doing what he's doing. But these are two of the best guys. These are two of the best guys. So let's get into it team by team. Where my turds at? Who are we looking at? What do we got going on here? I'm going to start with the Ravens, right? So obviously I already talked about Lamar Jackson. He's ridiculous. He's a running back. He's a quarterback. He's a freaking magician all in one. He's a cheat code, basically. I don't think you can not play him. I would approach it the same exact way I approached the Christian McCaffrey thing. Was, listen, if he's not my captain, I might not use him at all. But the chances are so low for him to have a dud game. It's crazy. So don't do that very often, right? Beyond Lamar Jackson, though, again, cheat code player. Amazing. Who can compete with him? Well, if Lamar Jackson's having this terrible day, and it's so unlikely, this is like the most unlikely thing ever, but I will say this guy's overpriced. But Mark Ingram is hey, Lamar Jackson's having a terrible game because Mark Ingram's doing well. Okay, that can happen. But I do want to caution. If Mark Ingram steals all the tutties, for example, like he did pretty much last week, actually caught touchdown passes, which he never does. All season, look at this. Catching a touchdown? Never. even catching a pass is so rare for Mark Ingram. And yet there it was, 2 touchdowns via the pass. Both guys did well last week. I'm not going to expect that to happen again. I'm going to play it so it doesn't happen. So when we talk about correlations, Mark Ingram and Lamar Jackson are almost always reverse correlation, meaning if Ingram is scoring a touchdown, Lamar Jackson is not throwing for it or running for it. So there's a reverse correlation between these two players. Keep that in mind. If you like to set rules on the domination station, you can set a rule not to include Ingram and Lamar Jackson lineups. It's not a must. I don't like making too many rules on the showdowns because weird shit happens. I can almost change the name of the show to Weird Shit Happens on Showdowns. Correlations, they don't always work. It's a single game. Here we go. We got our first SEO turd call. Sneed is a good turd. There we go. Don't ignore SEO experts' turd calls. He took one of these down last week like a boss. In addition to Ingram, you've got Gus Edwards, who's running for that's a turd. He's running for the Ravens. He's in there about half the snaps. But, Ingram gets most of the action. Edwards is down here at 2,600. He gets some looks. He scored a touchdown. He scored 20 points last week in a smash game. I like the idea of Edwards in a smash game. So if I'm looking for a correlated play with him, it's like Ravens defense. If the Ravens are just smashing the Rams, not out of the question. Even for a Rams home game, it's not out of the question that the Ravens just smash them here, right? So you want to build a lineup for that. You always want to build for various scenarios. These are showdowns, right? So there's 2 approaches. One is make a single lineup, enter it in a cash game, enter it in like a high dollar small tournament, I'm not going to say how much money, it doesn't matter, but like a 30 person, 150 person, a 75 man tournament, right? And in that, we want to build a high floor lineup. Gus Edwards is not going to be in that lineup. But if you're trying to attack a big contest, I think a lot of people make this mistake. They don't really quite understand how these work. If you're trying to attack a big contest with 10,000 entrants or 50,000 entrants or 100,000 entrants in it, there's no point in putting a single lineup in there. That's just throwing away the lineup. You have to be perfect to even make that contest worthwhile. We attack those to win them. You're going to lose money. The way the numbers work, over time, you will lose a shitload of money in those if you don't win them a lot. So it's a very volatile thing to do. It's a very volatile style of a contest to attack. A lot of times, especially on FanDuel, even when you attack and you do it right, you tie with a bunch of people, it doesn't pay off. So there are some challenges to that. But if you're doing that, you have to build lineups for narratives, for storylines. One of them is the Ravens defense comes in and smashes. We've seen Goff look like shit many times. And this Ravens defense, don't be fooled. It's really, really good. If they can stop the run, and yes, Gurley had a breakout week last week. He looked like his old self. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying that he's back. Maybe, but I'm not buying it. So we're going to make some lineups with Gurley in there, but there's also the possibility that, kind of Gurley doesn't look that great again. And, and this offense doesn't look good because the Ravens have an elite set of cornerbacks that, can slow down the Rams offense. You never know. There's also a scenario where the Rams offense does get going. So we want to build various lineups for various scenarios. So a Gus Edwards would be someone I'd want to pair up with Ravens defense because he'd do well in a game where the Ravens are smashing. Kind of like Malcolm Brown did last week, where he scored a touchdown alongside Todd Gurley in that game, where Gurley was smashing, but Brown got in on the action too, because the Rams are doing well. So pass catchers for the Ravens. Mark Andrews is the top dog. Again, he gets. I hear a lot of people don't like Mark. The guy in a normal game, it's like so consistent, 7 to 8 targets. Seems healthy this week. Didn't need to do anything last week. Got to ignore this. They didn't throw. Still had a good game. 4 targets. Week before, 8 targets. This was a game where they ran a lot. So for the most part, Mark Andrews, fantastic. Love him. 9,200, very expensive on DraftKings. We'll talk about him on FanDuel too. He's expensive there as well. 12.5. So, he's being priced as one of the most elite players, and it's tough to pay up there. I get it. Not probably where I'm going to go in cash. I'd rather be able to squeeze in my kickers. Probably. We'll see. We'll see where we get to. But Mark Andrews is the top option in the passing game. Marquise Brown, it's hard for me to love him with Jalen Ramsey set to be covering him. Oh, my God. Bobby, do not ignore this. 0 MVP. This is a guy who played Bobby Klinkert says Lamar Jackson 0 MVP. This is how you win the showdown and you make a lot of money. So this is interesting. I want to touch on this for a second because Bobby's been just tearing up everything. The sharpest player looks at a slate and says, "Hey, who is going to be the highest owned chalk? Who is going to be who everybody plays?" And it says, "Fuck it, I'm not playing that guy." Why? Because if I'm wrong, okay, I'll lose everything. But the one time I'm right will make up for 20 times I'm wrong. So in that 5% scenario, that Lamar Jackson has his dud game. And weird shit happens on showdowns. I just talked about that. In that 5% scenario where, Lamar Jackson, cheat code Jackson, just like cheat code Christian McCaffrey, doesn't do cheat code things. That's how you win all the monies. Okay, that's how you come in first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth place, like Bobby Klinkert did in an MLB showdown very recently. The cat is not here, but she might want to come in. She's out of the office for the moment. She'll be back. All right, so I can't tell everybody to not play Lamar Jackson and MVP because 95% of the time, I'm going to say like 90% of the time, he's going to be the highest scoring player on this entire slate, in this game. Let's be clear, 90% of the time. And on FanDuel, we want the highest scoring player. But, if other players do well, if he's not, if Mark Ingram comes in and steals all the touchdowns, that's how Bobby won the million, right? That is exactly the move. It was that week. I can go back, but let's keep with this breakdown. So the pass catchers, Marquise Brown, he's going to see Jalen Ramsey in coverage. Not a good situation for him. After Marquise, you've got a bunch of fucking turds. None of them are special. Seth Roberts, he was out there, got a target, but he got a lot of snaps. Last week, you got Miles Boykin going deep. He gets a couple targets every game. Willie Snead, couple targets every game. Willie Snead, we're not making Willie Snead a thing, but, these are cheapies. I'd much rather play the kickers if I got to pay down to these guys for the most part. Gus Edwards, I already talked about it. He's playable in certain situations. The ones I actually don't mind the most are like Hayden Hurst. Okay, these backup tight ends for the Ravens, because again, I believe the Rams cornerback core is quite elite. So it would be the tight ends for the Ravens that are doing this damage. So you've got Nick Boyle and you've got Hayden Hurst. Each of them are very, very viable super turds. But let's name them what they are. Super turds. Yeah, Antoine, there you go, is saying absorb Lamar, fade the override rate. Totally cool too. This is a very important point. You do not need to stack Lamar Jackson at all. The other Ravens are very overpriced. It's weird. It's almost strange when you see Mark Andrews at 12.5. Like, really? He's a 12.5 player now? And the same price as Cooper Kupp. Now, Cooper Kupp's in a bad matchup, but really? The same price as Cooper Kupp? So, yes, I like that approach a lot. Very sharp. Very sharp. All right, let's go back to it because I want to get through this entire team here. Picard. No. Those are all of our turds. That's all of our players from the Baltimore side. I want to, again, mention Justin Tucker. Very great kicker. dude puts up points every single week. Like, this is a kicker that puts up points like a regular player, like an offensive player. I would say Justin Tucker or Greg Zuerlein are the best values on the entire slate in terms of their floor, their ceiling, and their salary. And both of them allow you comfortably to play Lamar Jackson. So that's how you want to do it, especially on DraftKings, but FanDuel too, but especially on but FanDuel too. FanDuel too. Okay. And defense, Ravens absolutely in play. You know, we've seen the Rams defense, Rams offense implode many times. Many times. It's very common. Less so at home than on the road, but we see it. So it's not a team that won't implode. All right, let's get to the Rams. Real quick, Cooper Kupp. We'll see Marlon Cheeto Humphreys in coverage. Marlon Humphreys, elite. Yes, I mentioned Seth Roberts. Seth Roberts playable. No, I don't. I mean, you know, I saw DFS up north. Josh likes Seth Roberts a bit. He got a lot of snaps last week. Totally fine play. I don't go crazy with this guy. He's a fucking turd. He's a turd like the other turds. Like, he's not a guy. He gets a couple of targets. Like, we don't want to go too crazy with him. But he's playable, absolutely. And if you want to have 15% exposure, that kind of level, great. You know, he's as good as any of the other Willie Snead type wide receivers that all mix in for the Ravens. All right, Cooper Kupp. Gonna see Marlon Humphreys in coverage. Cooper Kupp's an elite player. He could probably beat Marlon Humphreys. You know, overall, it's a lot to pay. It's a lot to pay for him, but this is a guy that can put up big numbers. I'm definitely not going to make him a core piece of my build. I'm going to have some exposure. I don't think that Kupp is in a great spot because, again, the Ravens cornerbacks are super elite, not just regular. Marlon Humphreys is elite, like one of the best. He is a shutdown corner. He shut down elite players all season. Cooper Kupp's great, but it's not the best spot. Doesn't mean he can't hit a ceiling. It just means it will be harder for him. So that's a thing that people misunderstand a lot. Somebody, great coverage, great defense, that doesn't mean a player can't get there. It just means he's less likely to. So you want to reduce that exposure. Like, this will not be a core piece. If this was an easy defense, you'd be like all over Cooper Kupp this week. He'd be a great play. I mean, this is a guy who's put up 40 points in the past. But this is just elite cornerback play. So keep it in mind. Todd Gurley, everybody's getting on Todd Gurley, 25 carries, 3 targets. Remember, only 3 targets, guys. Let's not go crazy. Let's not get too excited. It is true, though, that the Ravens defense is most attackable via the run. So if the Rams are having success, there's a decent chance that it's happening via Gurley because they're hard to throw against. But let's not get too excited. Don't get too excited about this. I get it. You put up 21 fantasy points. Oh, Gurley's back. But you know what? He's priced elite now. He's priced elite. He's one of the highest priced players on the slate, above his quarterback. So just be careful with the Todd Gurley play. He's still not used a ton in the passing game. And for whatever reason, inexplicable, his superpower was his usage in the passing game. Last year, when Gurley was doing Gurley things, his usage was Christian McCaffrey levels. He would get 30 touches a game and 30 plus, and a lot of those would be passing plays. Now, it didn't happen last week. That doesn't mean they're not working him into the mix more. It's just kind of weird. Kind of weird that they haven't done that. Continuing down the list, Robert Woods. I'm just going to double check what it says. Doesn't have it in it. So he'll be back. Woods and Cooks are back. Now, I don't know of these guys which one Marcus Peters is going to be on and which one I can't remember. Elite cornerback play, but Marcus Peters is the worst of them. I can't remember which one, but anyway, either way, Marlon Humphrey should be on Cooper Kupp, would be my expectation. So these two guys will both project to have a little bit easier of a time. As far as workload, it's tough to know. Cooks is coming off a concussion. I don't believe that a concussion affects your play at all. So when you're off the concussion, you're off. Yeah, Peters is the one, Vince. Yeah, here's a comment. Peters is the guy that I want to attack, but you don't know who he's going to be on. That's the problem. It's really hard to say. Like, Yeah. It's really hard to say, Alex. It's really hard to say for sure, like who Peters is going to be on. So just these are the two guys. Definitely mix them in. Definitely mix them in. If you're going to play Jared Goff, you want to tie him into Kupp, Woods, or Cooks, of course, or Everett, who is the primary tight end. He's coming off a bad game. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. As a matter of fact, again, Ravens elite cornerback play. We talked about that. Jimmy Smith. Okay, so it's Jimmy. That's right. Now I remembered. Jimmy Smith and Marcus Peters. Jimmy Smith is better than Peters, right? But we don't know who Smith is going to be on. I expect Humphreys to be on Kupp. Peters will be on one of these two guys. We don't know. They switch it up. Gerald Everett. I like the Gerald Everett play. A lot of people saying with Cook's back, we shouldn't play Gerald Everett. Now he won't get as many targets. Good point by Buffalo on the beat that Cooks and Peters were on the same team for a while. That's true. Knows them inside and out. Not sure that means anything though. I don't know. Who does that advantage? The corner or the wide receiver? I don't know. But here we go. Gerald Everett, cheap, 4,800, has a 12 target game in him, has a 10 target game recently, has an 11 target game and an 8 target game. Yes, he has ones and threes, but this is what we play in tournaments. And I do think that with all of the elite cornerback play for the Ravens, that Gerald Everett should come into play. It's not like teams have had a lot of success attacking the Rams via the tight end position, but I don't give a shit about that. I really don't. I don't even pay attention to it. Who cares? Who cares? DVP, like these numbers, especially it's a bullshit number. Who have they played against that had a tight end? Like, we don't know. It doesn't matter. Don't even look at that. This number is designed to psych out your brain and make you not want to click him. Don't look at that. Okay. But Everett's in a good spot. He is the primary pass catching tight end. He is like a legitimate, almost cash playable type of guy at this price. Certainly, even in higher end builds, you could use a guy like him if you needed to. If you didn't want to play the kickers, I love the kickers. Don't know why you don't want to play them, but if you don't, there you go. Now, kickers correlate with defense. So, take that for what it's worth. If you want to build a Raven-centric lineup where you think they're going to smash and you put the kicker and the defense, no Gurley, okay. If you want to be contrarian and do a Rams defense, everybody thinks the Ravens are going to smash in this game. What if the Ravens offense isn't great? What if the Ravens offense is like mediocre in this one? It hasn't happened all year. It could happen. The Rams are an elite run defense, and if they can use that to their advantage against Lamar Jackson, I doubt it. But if they did, then you could kind of do a Rams defense and Zerline combo. So I just wanted to get to that. So now we get to the turd zone. I already said I love Zerline. Rams defense, turd, but playable. Defenses can score in a lot of different ways. Even if the Ravens are smashing, we saw a game earlier this season where the Patriots were putting it on the Jets like never before. But the Jets happened to return a punt for a touchdown, and they they picked up a fumble for a touchdown. 2 plays like that, and they scored 21 fantasy points. No one's going to play the Ravens defense, the Rams defense. No one. So you can play them because what we're trying to do in these showdowns is put enough little difference in there to win. I wouldn't play them on the main slate. It wouldn't be let me just play these guys. No. But in a showdown, weird shit happens. So you could play them. Get a few shares of that. And when you do play them, build a lineup that sort of correlates with what that might be. Now, a lot of, like I said, I don't want to lock in too many rules because we've seen it in the past. Rams getting smashed, but their defense scores 2 touchdowns and they're in the nuts. And you don't want to make a rule that disallows for that. All right, let's get to the turd zone. First one, Malcolm Brown. What's wrong with Malcolm Brown? All he does is get a few carries every single week. Sometimes he scores a touchdown. Most times he doesn't do anything. He's a turd. But, 7.5 points, that'll get you, that'll do something. So he's playable. Tyler Higbee, I see some people mentioning him in the chat. Not anybody I'm super excited about. Everett seems to be the guy. But the backup tight end, he's won a lot of people showdowns in the past. And again, the Ravens have elite cornerback play, so yeah, sure. Maybe they'll throw to the tight end. Right? Moving down the list, I don't like these guys. Don't like them. Another one I want to avoid. I just avoided even talking about him. Josh Reynolds, in order for him to really be relevant, I mean, he could catch a pass. He's not going to be out there a lot. When all three wide receivers are healthy for the Rams, you're not going to see a lot of Josh Reynolds out there. It's just not how it goes. Now let's jump over to Josh's cheat sheet here real quick. Here we go. 6:40. We're getting close to game time. Sorry, I got in late, man. I flew in from Miami. Let's take a look at the cheat sheet. I just got home an hour ago. A couple hours ago. I had to shower, get prepped. That's how it goes. All right. Check prep cheat sheet. So if you check the DFS Up North Josh cheat sheet, he's calling it a fade. So a man after Bobby Klinkert's heart. He's saying, hey, you could fade Lamar Jackson at the captain spot. He's too expensive. I'm not of that mind that you need like 5 to 10% is too low for me. As a matter of fact, I would be higher than that. Why? Because I can fit him in with the kickers, and I could see a scenario here where this game's kind of shitty and low scoring. Like I wanna, but the Ravens win. Like the Ravens just dominate, and Lamar Jackson does his thing, and defensively they do well. So I want to have those type of builds. I don't think that Lamar Jackson's going to have a ton of success throwing the football, but he never does. He'll have enough. He'll complete passes. He'll do his thing. Oh, here we go. Hunter's out there. He just posted a scenarios article. So, for anybody who wants to read up more on this stuff, Hunter's article's out. He breaks down various scenarios. Love it. Love this article. Various scenarios, how the game can go down and how to construct your lineups based on those scenarios. Hunter has won these showdowns. This is a guy you want to pay attention to. Love it. Love it. Mark Ingram, 15-20%. Listen, Mark Ingram's going up. It's an elite Rams run defense. They're what? Wait, what did I say they were? 5th in DVOA. 3rd in DVOA. So this is a super against the grain play for me. I don't love Mark Ingram at all. It's against the grain. Although, like I said, the matchup doesn't favor it. If you're building a cash lineup, if you're building a cash lineup, and that's not where I would go, or a high dollar, but if you want to be contrarian, I would look at the ownership on Mark Ingram. I think he'll be higher owned than what he should be considering the matchup. Now, Antoine making an interesting point in the chat about Woods being out all week. I think if anything, and maybe not kind of being a strong part of the game plan, some personal issues. We don't know what's going on with him. He missed the game last week. I don't actually know what the personal issue is that he's had. It's not an injury, but he'll be back. I don't think it needs, has he been heavily involved with the game planning this week? We don't know. But if there's anything that might favor Cooks or mentioning maybe Reynolds getting some extra snaps, that could be it. So keep that in mind. Mark Andrews, very expensive for a captain. Josh loves him a lot here as a captain play. I could see it. Again, 8 targets. He's cheaper. He allows you to afford some other things. I still think he's kind of expensive. Actually, all things considered, 9,200, still very expensive. But he's been doing it every week. 23, 17. It doesn't take much. He scores a lot of touchdowns for this team. If Lamar Jackson's throwing for touchdowns, a lot of times it's to Mark Andrews. It could be to someone else. Like I said, the other Nick Boyle, Hayden Hurst. But he does love those tight ends. So Mark Andrews in there. Get some exposure to him for sure at the captain spot if you're building a sort of varied approach that's not Lamar Jackson heavy. I could totally see that. Todd Gurley, it's crazy, these numbers, but, he's got the best matchup. Ravens defense is mainly attackable via the run. It's tough to attack them via the pass. Like I said, they have elite cornerback play. So you can attack them via the run. Todd Gurley coming off the big game. People thinking he's going to build off of that. We'll see. We'll see if that happens. He's about the same salary level as Mark Andrews, though. And I definitely like if I'm making a cash lineup, for example, I definitely prefer Todd Gurley in a situation like that. So I prefer a running back to any sort of a pass catcher. I would include Cooper Kupp in the mix as well. We know he can go off again. It's a terrible matchup, but he can go off. So if you're building sort of diversification around your lineups, do that. But the most obvious, the cash guy, You could do a Jackson, or you could do something different. I don't think this makes sense here, but you could do something different by going down to a kicker or a defense and throwing that in the captain spot so that you can load up. I don't believe that this will be that type of game. That's not what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a game more that will. I don't think it's going to be some high scoring back and forth craziness affair. I think this will be more of a a defensive type of game where Lamar Jackson's doing his thing, but you never know. So if you put a kicker in here, of course, you can just kind of load up on some of these other spots that look pretty good. And then it's whoever you want, Woods and Goff or, something like that. So you can do things like that if you put a kicker in there. I'm not recommending that, but it's very, very doable. Yeah, Goff can be played there, Ravens defense. So here's the mix that Josh put together for DraftKings that you could take a look at. Again, I'd probably be a little higher on Jackson myself. Especially, this is more GPP. I think one of the things that we have to specify really well is, like, in cash games or in high dollar small tournaments, 10, 50 man, 100 man, 150, which should be everybody who's watching, that should be your bread and butter, unless you just want 100, 150 lineup mass multi-entry these using the Dom Station, and that's awesome too. Do that. But when you're doing that, you have to be a lot more contrarian, really. You want to find uniqueness because you want to win these, not just tie with a bunch of people. And being unique, and weird shit happens in showdowns. That's just what happens. That's how people win. Every week, some weird shit happens. So you got to be on that. But if you're trying to build a cash lineup or a high dollar tournament lineup that's small tournament, you don't want to be getting too crazy with any of this stuff. Like, you want to play Lamar Jackson. You want to play Lamar Jackson. You want to play these two running backs, and then you want to figure out the rest. The two kickers, and then you figure out the rest. Like, this is probably how I would set it up. So I'm just going to show this real quick. How I would set up maybe a higher dollar. I'm not going to do the whole lineup. I don't want to give it away. I also don't want everybody to do the same shit because I don't know if it's going to work. But this is pretty much probably the beginning setup of how I might do one. You get the good plays in there, lock in the points, right? And then you can make decisions. Do you want to mess with one of these guys, one of the wide receivers for the Rams? Do you want to maybe use a defense? There's not that much salary left. That's the challenge. Use an Everett, maybe take a 0, maybe go to one of these turds. I wouldn't do that. But you could use a defense here, and then, one of these guys. But this is probably how it's set up. I totally get, though, the idea of fading him on DraftKings, because you can see here, as soon as you put in this 20K player at captain, and another way to go might be not to use him at captain, just to use him in the flex. And if you could find one of these wide receivers that does well, and I think that's the approach that Josh probably would like and take, and say, what he's saying is, hey, play him in the flex. And yeah, there we go. He's underweight on the captain, so this makes more sense. Underweight on captain, but loaded up in the flex. And the reason being, just to play the math of, hey, 20K in the captain spot, I can't afford. He'll score 33, but we could get a 25 from a player who's 7,000 or 8,000 less, and that extra salary in our lineup helps us get there. So totally makes sense to approach it that way as well. And I think that's what Bobby was kind of saying in the same sense. The idea being, the fade Lamar in the captain spot is really a play on the numbers, where you just, as you put the lineup together, it just doesn't work very well with Lamar Jackson there. You've got to use two kickers, and even then you almost can't get a proper lineup in without at least using one really crappy guy. I don't mind using one crappy guy like an Everett, and then you can finish it out. But so there's merit to this kind of a lineup. But the issue here is, you have to put in Everett or some two kickers and another cheap player in order to afford Lamar Jackson. That's going to be the approach on FanDuel. All right, let's take a look real quick at DraftKings. We're getting too close to game time to keep this going, so I'm going to try to go over this real quick. But if you take a look at FanDuel, the biggest note is that at MVP on FanDuel, the way you should approach this is, if Lamar Jackson is not my MVP in a lineup, he's not in my lineup. Okay? Because unlike DraftKings, there's no 2x multiplier. This is a very, very important point. So if Lamar Jackson at 17.5 isn't the highest scoring player on the slate, then when you pay him, when you pay for him and he's not the high scoring slate, you're limiting the rest of your lineup too much. So if he's in my lineup, he is the MVP on FanDuel, right? That's it. He's the MVP. I got to build around it. Okay, I can do that. But he's the MVP if he's in my lineup. Again, if Lamar Jackson's in my lineup, I'm probably not playing Mark Ingram. This goes for both sides. I'm just not. Ingram's too expensive. I can't play him with Mark Jackson. It's that simple. They're not correlated. One should be played or the other, probably not both. I'm going to say it's unlikely that both of the. Now, we saw last week it happened. Weird shit happens in showdowns, which is why I don't tell you to make a rule, because weird shit happens in showdowns. And naturally, the optimizer will probably not pair these guys up very much just because you can't afford them both. But it's just important to note, it's more so on FanDuel. I'm not in love with, yes, did Lamar Jackson throw him a touchdown? Did he reception last week? Yes. But that's not been a common occurrence. Todd Gurley, very playable here. Again, he has the best matchup. Baltimore run defense, not as good as pass defense. Don't go all in on this guy. He had the one good week. He got a lot of usage. It looks good for him. But still not a ton of passing game usage. But he's in the best spot on the Rams. No doubt. Cooper Kupp, again, tough coverage. We talked about that. When you're looking at the salaries here, man, it's amazing. Mark Andrews right up here with Cooper Kupp and above Robert Woods. I mean, who knew we'd get here? But I do like Mark Andrews to be the most likely person to catch a touchdown from Lamar Jackson. So, keep that in mind. As we move down this list, Cooks, very playable. I like both kickers. Again, Gus Edwards, crazy expensive considering, his recent production. But, he had a breakaway run last week and got 17 points, and he is involved every single week. He is involved by the goal line, so he's absolutely in play. 8,500, not quite turdly, but salary level, but that's what this slate looks like. He is there 50% of the time. Like Mark Ingram gets a little bit more of the actual touches, but Gus Edwards is out there a lot. So he's definitely in play. Brown, talked about him. Jalen Ramsey coverage, not the best. Want to not go too crazy with that. One important note, don't stack Lamar Jackson. Don't make a rule to stack him. It's not necessary. It's not necessary. Yeah, so you have Kupp. It's amazing. He's close in price to Woods. Cooks is really cheap, and I like him the most just based on the price point. He's back off a concussion. Like I said, I don't believe that concussions have lingering effects. When you're back, you're 100%. So no worries there. Love the kickers. Gus Edwards, Gerald Everett, great price point, 8K. I talked about him before. Got a lot of targets a couple times. Josh Edwards, you're going to need something to happen to one of these other guys for Josh Reynolds to be relevant. You're going to need another injury to Cook or Woods to not be in the game plan, or some weird shit to happen. Weird shit does happen, but don't go crazy with that. Given the choice of these two, I would absolutely choose Everett, and it's not even close. Going down the list, Malcolm Brown could vulture a touchdown here or there. Absolutely needs to be played as turd level, 10% exposure, no more. Nick Boyle, same turd level, 10% type exposure. They do throw to him on occasion. Hayden Hurst, same deal. Seth Roberts, I mean, he's out there for a lot of snaps. He got a touchdown last week, but, not getting too excited there. Tyler Higbee, backup tight end. We love backup tight ends in showdowns. For turd exposure, again, very, very low end. This is not the Mike Thomas that we want to use. Don't get confused. Different guy. Willie Snead, Miles Boykin, part of the turd crew for the Ravens. We already talked about these guys. Nice thing is they're super cheap, so you can play any one of these guys to create unique lineups. And when you're making 150 lineups, include them. But these are not players that I would use in a primary type of a lineup. These are turds. I say this every single way. I would be clear. Like, these guys are long shots. Boykin probably has the most upside of the kind of garbage crew. Because he's got big playability. He's got a lot of speed. He's a rookie. So, you think he gets a little bit better every week, a little more involved, but we'll have to see what happens. Yeah, they do throw deep to Miles Boykin. Mama's so fat. 11 has mentioned that in Slack. Here we go. Ravens fan. Love that. bringing that Ravens point of view. Miles Boykin. Andrew's asking Reynolds play. Like very low. He's not going to be out there most of the time. He only plays when Cooks and Woods, one of them are out. So, 4 wide sets. Like there'll be times when he's in the game, but you're going to have to get really lucky with him. Or an injury could bring him in. And that's it. None of these guys. I'm not a play the special teamer type of guy. Let's go to Josh's notes real quick. I just want to see if he agrees. He's only 60 to 70%. I get it. But the one thing I'm going to add, let's see if he wrote this. The one thing I would add is just like if you're not playing him at MVP, just don't play him in that lineup. Do a lineup that doesn't. When you have a no Lamar Jackson, you can get a lot of other studs in there. So let me just show you what that looks like. So if I didn't play Lamar Jackson, I can have Ingram and Gurley and I can get a Legatron in there, and I can get a lot of studs in there. I can get a kicker, and then I can get Cooper Kupp. All the other names. And if you don't like these guys, sure, put Cooks. Brandon Cooks has explosive ability. You can do Andrews and like that. There are other approaches if you didn't have Lamar. So that's what I'd say. If Lamar is not my captain, I'm not playing him in that lineup. That would be your uniqueness for those lineups. That would bring the different. Okay, so he's got 67% Jackson, couple of shares of Goff, some Ingram, some Gurley captain. This seems right. I'd probably go a little higher on Gurley if I was going to not use Jackson at the captain spot or the MVP spot. But I definitely like Mark Ingram there too for the non-Lamar Jackson lineups. Same reason, just in case it's one of those crazy games where Ingram, vultures all the tutties. Got a pretty good sense of exposures here. I love the kickers. As I've said, I like them more on Draftkings and Fanduel. They just open up so much possibility. They open up the ability to actually play Lamar Jackson at captain, which I like. If you want to. I'm not a big Goff at captain, but, no, I probably wouldn't play. Like, Goff is not an exciting captain for me. Could he do something? Sure, but I feel like if he's playing well, you'll get some of his receivers will be the ones who score better and they're cheaper. So I'd rather go and try to land on the wide receiver that goes nuts. Give me a Brandon Cook in that scenario, Robert Woods putting up 28 points. It's so much easier for wide receivers to put up 25, 30 points on DraftKings compared to a quarterback. Quarterbacks have a really tough path. Unless you're Lamar Jackson, they have a really tough path to a high score. But I think the wide receivers, even running backs that don't catch passes like Todd Gurley, have a tough path to, but not as tough as quarterback, but have a tough path to like 25 plus. But wide receivers definitely can get there a lot quicker. A couple of passes, there are 20 fantasy points like nothing. Okay, and like a Brandon Cooks is the perfect example. He's so explosive of a player, and he's cheap. So it's like 6K. All right. He's explosive. He'll have the best matchup. This guy can get to 30 points. He can outscore Lamar Jackson. Like he has that in him. But when you start this way, and again, we put in a couple kickers. Okay. Not that guy. A couple kickers. Now I can just do whatever I want. Now I can get Jackson in there. I can get, Andrews. I can get Gurley. I can do whatever I want. Look at what it looks like. I can get off of one of these guys and get, something else interesting going on. So, you can switch it up, but this only works. Look, I can get Woods in here. I can do a lineup that's very interesting. Even with Jackson. So the Jackson fade, to be clear, I'm going to end this here. Yeah, Michael's mentioning this. We follow this. We follow this. On DraftKings, it's pretty rare that the quarterback... This is a different scenario because Lamar Jackson is a running back and a quarterback combination. But normally, it's pretty rare that the quarterback is the winning captain. A, because they're fairly expensive most of the time. And that's a thing. And B, because it's so easy for wide receivers to put up points on DraftKings with the PPR format. And no, you don't need to have his QB. You don't need to. You might want to. It's a good idea to. But you don't need to. Weird shit happens in showdowns. wide receivers put up points faster than quarterbacks do. And if a quarterback, maybe 2 wide receivers, it doesn't. Maybe the quarterback's expensive. It doesn't. You don't need to, but it helps. It's not a bad idea. So if you want to make a rule, if a wide receiver is your captain, then pair him with his quarterback in the flex. Okay, nothing wrong with that. If the wide receiver's going off, there's a good chance the quarterback's having a good day. So they are correlated, and we want to correlate our lineups. Again, not get too crazy with it. This year, like I said, I've been less crazy with the correlation in showdowns, not in classic. Correlate the fuck out of your lineups, dude. That's how our guys are winning tournaments and coming in. Look at the Millie Maker. Look at Burns. Look at Bobby here. Look at all of our guys who won. I'm sending out like 8 swag bags from this weekend. Everybody who won big prizes this weekend, big contests this weekend, all correlated lineups. Winston to Godwin. You always do that. But in a showdown, weird shit happens. So you don't absolutely need to, because in the end of the day, it's not that those aren't good, but sometimes the nuts lineup, the one that we need to hit, just somehow wasn't that. So you don't want to limit it too much. There are certain rules we want to make. Like if the quarterback is the captain, unless he's Lamar Jackson, who is a running back as well. But if a normal quarterback like Jared Goff is your captain, then yes, you definitely want 2 of his wide receivers. 2. Why? Because, so let me be clear on this, guys. This is an important point. I don't always get to these points. Let's say we put Goff in here, right? He's not a running quarterback. He's a guy who's going to throw from the pocket, right? He doesn't have a lot of rushing yards on the season. Yeah, just to be clear, yards 3. I mean, he doesn't run. Okay, he doesn't run. For him to be captain, that means that he threw for a ton of yardage, for a bunch of touchdowns, everything. So if he threw all of that to one wide receiver, that one wide receiver would be the captain, the nuts captain. But if he spreads it around to 2 guys, then there's a chance that him. So I don't normally play quarterbacks at captain, but if I do, I pair them with 2 of their pass catchers. That is just how the math works. If he's not going to run for touchdowns, if he's not going to have rushing yards like a Lamar Jackson, then the only way Goff is going to be the captain is if not he's throwing to 1 guy, he's got to be throwing to 2. Because if he's only throwing to 1, or most of the action is going to 1 wide receiver, then that wide receiver will be the captain. Only when he's throwing to 2 does it work. All right, we're 52 minutes in. It's too long. We're too close to game time. Good luck tonight. Let's make some lineups. Let's take down another showdown. Let's keep representing. This has been an awesome weekend of NFL action. It was a great weekend for me at the King of the Beach. But just, doing all the content from there was crazy. And also seeing all the big win posts in Slack just was unbelievable. Like I said, my wife's like, dude, what the fuck? I have to send out like 9 swag bags this week. And it was crazy. We got so many big winners. That's what happens on a tough week, by the way. Tough week. Not a lot of the chalk was hitting. You have to really think hard about your lineup. I will cover what I did in the King of the Beach contest tomorrow in a look back video. I'm going to go over everything, and I want to share the strategy behind it. I hope for the very few of you who watch it, and I know it's not a lot. I know it's a lot of the crew that's watching this now, but it's not a lot of our members that watch these type of things. They don't want to learn. That's okay. But for those that do, I want to explain the theory behind why you put a certain lineup together a certain way. We'll look at all of the lineups in the Millie Maker or in the King of the Beach. These are sharp players for the most part. We'll look at the winning lineups, but I want to explain what I was thinking in a sort of that type of a contest in that size field, what my approach was and why. I came in 14th, not bad. Wish I had a little more balls to play what I originally wanted to do. Could have done a little bit better. All right. Good luck tonight, guys.